Here is my copy of X-Men 1, and I have the potential of increasing the value of this comic by several $1,000s, while simultaneously spending a lot less now versus if I had sent this book in a few years ago to realize that increase in value. And in this video, we are going to talk about potentially how you can do the same thing for your comic collection through CPR. Stay tuned. Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. Before going any further, I want to take a moment to define what CPR is for those that may not be familiar with it. CPR stands for crack, press, and resubmit. It is a process through which people will remove a graded comic from its slab. That comic will be dry cleaned, pressed, and then resubmit it to a third-party grading company in an effort to realize a bump in grade and value. It's important to recognize that not every comic is a good candidate for CPR. The book has to present with cleanable and/or pressable defects, but we'll talk a little more about that shortly. Getting back to my example, if I had submitted my 5.0 X-Men 1 into CGC back in, let's say, April of 2021, it would have cost me $1,600 to have that book be regraded versus if I were to send it in right now. That's roughly 4% of the fair market value of the comic at the time in April of 2021 when it was valued at $40,000. I'm using the value for the 6.0 because I'm assuming that with a clean and a press, my 5.0 has the potential to go up to a 6.0. It's important to mention a couple of things here. CGC charges $150 minimum or 4% of the fair market value to grade a comic that is valued greater than $1,000. For this same comic, CBCS would charge $200 as a flat fee. With comic book values dropping dramatically over the last few years, now could actually be a very good time to CPR those high value comic book keys, because as the values have come down, so too have the cost to actually regrade those comics, especially because CGC charges a percentage of their value to actually grade them. The regrading fee for this copy of X-Men #1 has essentially been cut in half along with its value. The total grading fee from CGC would be approximately $812 or $787.88 less than the fee would have been in 2021 because of the decline in value. Now, with that said, increasing the grade of this book from a 5.0 to a 6.0 would have a profound effect on the value of this book in the present day. An increase from a 5.0 to a 6.0 would increase the value of this book from $11,673 to $20,000, specifically $20,303 right now for the exact same book. And when you subtract the $812 to have this book regraded, you add to it $70 to have the book cleaned and pressed, and maybe $15 or so for shipping, you still end up realizing a potential profit of $7,700 on the exact same book right now. Now, there are definitely some caveats with this, and I'm going to touch on just a couple of them. Not every comic is a good candidate for CPR. It's important to take time to perform a careful visual inspection of the comic. You want to look for cleanable defects like pencil marks, dirt, and other soiling. You also want to be mindful of pressable defects like creases, bends, and impressions that do not break color. In addition to doing a physical inspection of the comic itself, a very careful one I would add, it might also be very helpful to take a look at the grader's notes for these comics. And I say that because there's some great insight that can be gleaned from the grader's notes if they are present. And for example, there is a chance that my copy of Fantastic Four issue #1 might actually be a better candidate for CPR than my copy of X-Men 1. And I want to take a look at the grader's notes for these two comics to illustrate that point. When you take a look at the grader's notes for X-Men issue #1, there are a couple of them here, but only one in particular might actually be improved with a clean or a press, and it's the very first one. They mention light multiple stains on the front cover, and depending upon what those stains are, potentially they can be removed or at least improved. The next two things that are highlighted, the Marvel chipping and also the reader's crease, are two things that cannot be erased, if you will, with a clean or a press. Now let's contrast that to the grader's notes for the Fantastic Four issue #1. You see a lot more notes here, and a lot more of these notes are things that potentially can be improved with a clean and a press. The very first one there, back cover, multiple creases. Back cover, multiple finger bends. Those are two things that can absolutely be improved with a good press. Next couple, chips out, not something that can be fixed, but when you get to the front cover, multiple creases, front cover, multiple finger bends, full bottom front cover, small multiple stains. Those are things that should be either completely removed or at least improved with a very good press. This is why taking a look at the grader's notes can be very helpful, because it can actually confirm for you the presence of those defects at the time that the book was actually graded. Now, this is important for lots of different reasons, because these cases that comics are encapsulated in are not 100% protective, right? That's important to make mention of. But the other thing is that there is something called paper reversion. Sometimes if a comic is not properly pressed, it can actually revert to its previous form. So by looking at the grader's notes and looking at the comic itself and doing a visual inspection, you have the ability to determine whether this book was ever cleaned or pressed in the first place, or if it was just paper reversion defects that you happen to be seeing right now. It's important to mention here that there is a lot to CPR, to making the decision to crack, press, and resubmit a comic back in for grading. And in this video, I'm not able to get into all of the details, but hopefully I've given you a couple of things to think about and to consider. If you found this video helpful, I want to encourage you to give it a thumbs up. If there are additional questions, comments, or concerns that you have, I encourage you to leave them down in the comments section. If you've had some success with CPR, let us know about that. If you've had some failures, let us know about that as well, because it serves as a cautionary note, because again, not every comic is a good candidate for CPR. You could potentially actually lose grade. So if you have thoughts, be certain to leave those down in the comments section. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do that on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo, should you practice art, or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations, synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting, Indian style in the gold.